I'm Rachel Hernandez, real estate investor turned mobile home investor and best-selling author. I make a living investing in mobile homes for cash flow for long-term passive income. After many mistakes and lessons learned, I've been able to create the kind of life where I can do the types of things I want to do, not have to do. I created the Adventures in Mobile Homes podcast to share with you what I've learned so you can spend more time with family, friends, and do things you love. Mobile home investing can help you get there. If you want to hear real stories with practical and actionable advice you can use from someone who's been in the trenches and who's still investing today to create the type of life you love, then you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Well, hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Adventures in Mobile Homes podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Hernandez, aka Mobile Home Girl of AdventuresinMobileHomes.com. Thank you so much for joining me here on the 81st episode of the podcast. Now, just in case you missed it, be sure to check out the last episode where I interview real estate investing expert Sharon Vornholt and talk about all things probates as a lead generating source for mobile home investors. You can check it out at www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/80. So today, I'm going to be doing something a little different. And I haven't done this in quite some time. I'm actually going to be talking here, just me to you, and do a solo podcast. Now, if you've been a listener of the show, then you know that's exactly how this podcast, Adventures in Mobile Homes, started way back in 2020 during the pandemic. Now, as of this recording, it's February 2024, and I've officially been a podcaster for 3 years, going into the 4th year podcasting as a podcaster. Now, for everyone out there, my blog, Adventures in Mobile Homes, officially launched in 2007. So yes, I've been around the web for a while, sharing my stories and adventures as a real estate investor turned mobile home investor. Today, the podcast has a mix of solo episodes where I continue to educate you on different areas of mobile home investing to help you become a successful mobile home investor. But this past year, I've added interviews with industry experts within different topics in mobile home investing. So I've mixed it up a bit between the solo episodes, which I started with, and now the interviews with industry experts. Now, with that being said, I've officially started a private podcast, which I'm going to talk more about here in this episode. And the purpose of the private podcast is to take you behind the scenes of what I've been doing as a mobile home investor, the ins and outs of how I make money today, as well as discuss the behind the scenes of the podcast itself, as well as other projects that I'm working on. So today, I'm going to talk about the private podcast and what it's all about, including how you can get access to it. But before I move on, let's hear a word from our sponsor. Hey there, Rachel here. Have you enjoyed the show and podcast so far? Has it helped you with your own mobile home investing journey? And have you received value from it? If yes, then consider supporting the show. So, how can you show your support? Well, there's a couple of things that you can do. The first thing you can do is leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or anywhere else the podcast can be heard. Go to www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/podcast to see the sites and links where you can leave a review on. I'll be ever so grateful if you do. And you may even get a shout out and your review read right on the show, just for doing it. Another thing you can do is support the show and buy me a coffee. If you know me, you know how much I love coffee. If you've gotten a lot of good information out of the podcast and it has helped you as a mobile home investor, I'd love your support. Now, in the future, I'll be giving shout outs to those who support me. So if you do, that may be you. Go to
www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/support for more information on how you can show your support. Again, www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/support. And if you want to take it a step further and receive exclusive only content, consider being a member. On the support page there, you'll find info about how you can view exclusive content, including access to new videos and blog posts, a shout out in a future episode for your support, access to video replays on my past speaking engagements if you haven't seen me speak yet, and more. Check out www.adventuresinmobilehomes.com/support to find out more. Thanks so much for continuing to listen to the podcast and for your support. Now, back to the show.
All right, I'm back. And guess what? I'm recording right here in my private office where I do all of my thinking, including recording interviews for the podcast, video trainings, and video commentaries. All the things. So this is a sneak peek of what you'll get when you listen to the private podcast as I record all the episodes right here in my private office. So let's talk more about the private podcast. What is the private podcast? What is it all about? And why did I put it together in the first place? Well, the private podcast is really a place for me to be more candid with you about what I do and how I do it as a successful mobile home investor. Now, I realize there's only so much time I can pack into the public podcast, especially since I'm doing more interviews with industry experts this year and moving forward. And let me tell you, I've got a lot planned for the public podcast going into the future. So in this private podcast, I go into more detail about what I've been doing lately for my own mobile home investing business. More behind the scenes, exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. Plus, it's a chance for you to get to know me more and learn inside information about the industry, as well as tips and advice on how to be a better mobile home investor. And lately, I've been doing more wholesaling deals for my own mobile home investing business. So I do talk about these deals and what I've been doing behind the scenes to give you the latest scoop on my business as a mobile home investor right in the private podcast. Now, aside from that, I also go into the behind the scenes of the public podcast to let you know what I've got planned, including upcoming interviews with industry experts and the topics covered. And just recently, I interviewed an expert, actually a licensed real estate agent who lists and sells mobile homes working with both sellers and buyers as an expert interview where we talk about how to search for mobile homes online. Plus, we get into the ins and outs of working with real estate agents as mobile home investors, including other topics like financing a mobile home, becoming a licensed real estate agent, specializing in listing mobile homes, marketing tips, and more. So we covered a lot in the expert interview. And these expert interviews will be coming soon and be available to members of the support page, which I'll talk more about. But before that, I want to talk about the first episode of the private podcast, which I just released. And in this first episode, I talk candidly from my private office about my journey as a podcaster since 2020, interviews planned ahead, including what I've been doing lately for my own mobile home investing business. Actually, at the time of that recording, I had a closing scheduled for the next day for a wholesaling deal. So moving forward, I'll have more to say about how the deal progressed and what exactly happened. So if you're listening to this and you're already a member of the support page, stay tuned for that. Plus, in the first episode of the private podcast, I also go into the details of what I've got planned for my upcoming one-on-one coaching program, especially for mobile home investors. I talk about what the coaching program will include, as well as how it works, what's included with the coaching program, the ins and outs of how I'll work together with coaching students to help them become successful mobile home investors, and of course, how to get an extra special discount for the coaching program as a member of the support page. Also, I touch upon the Discord community and all of the interesting conversations and questions we're having on there with members of the support page. I'm really enjoying hearing about everyone's progress on there, including helping members out with their questions and current deals. So, thank you for everyone on there for your participation and willingness to share your journey with all the members of the support page. So, that's what I've got covered in the first official episode of the private podcast. And speaking of the private podcast, I just want to give a shout out to a recent member who listened to the episode recently. Special thanks to Ryan, who's a member of the support page. Now, Ryan writes, "Great podcast. Looking forward to the probate interview and your coaching." Thanks so much for your support, Ryan. I'm really glad you enjoyed the first episode of the private podcast. Now, speaking of the probate interview, there's an interview I recently released on the public podcast with my good podcaster and real estate investing friend, Sharon Warnholt, where we talk about all things probate as a lead generating source for mobile home investors. And if you'd like to check it out, you can go to www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/80 for the full interview and the show notes. Now, getting back to things, the last thing I want to touch upon is the topic of social media. Now, if you don't know this, I'm not much on social media anymore nowadays. I do have my social media accounts up where I post new episodes and blog posts for Adventures of Mobile Homes with my handle @MobileHomeGirl. But because of my busy schedule and how exhausting social media can be, I'm just not on there as much as I used to be. Though I do post up my videos regularly on my YouTube channel, Adventures of Mobile Homes, if you'd like to subscribe and check it out. So definitely stay in touch with me there if you'd like to continue to get regular updates. So nowadays, podcasting is my official form of social media, which is something that I learned from my good podcaster friend, Jen Amos, an award-winning podcaster. And as a side note, for anyone interested, Jen runs a military-based podcast for military families called Holding Down the Fort, if you'd like to check it out. As I am a military spouse, which I've been public about on different podcast shows, which I'll link up here in the show notes. Now, getting back to things, since I'm really busy with things like my own mobile home investing business, and because social media can be so exhausting, I've made the decision to make my podcast my official form of social media. So if you'd like to stay in community with me, definitely stay tuned for more podcast episodes on the public podcast, Adventures of Mobile Homes. And consider checking out the private podcast, which talks about the behind the scenes of what I've been doing as a mobile home investor, including other projects that I'm working on. And to access the private podcast, you'll need to sign up as a member of the support page. Now, if you'd like to get more information about the support page, including what it involves as a member, you can check out episode 52 of the podcast, where I talk about the 2-year anniversary of the show, including the membership program and what's involved. You can check it out at www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/52. And really, the membership is really a place for you to be more in community with me, learn the ins and outs of what I do for my own mobile home investing business behind the scenes, what I'm planning for the public podcast, as well as other projects that I'm working on. Plus, it's a way to get ongoing training on different topics within mobile home investing, as I'm lining up expert interviews as previously discussed, video trainings and commentaries on specific topics within mobile home investing that you won't find anywhere else. And also to be in community with other members through the Discord community as well, where you can post up questions, post up what you've been up to with your latest deals, get feedback and advice. And of course, get access to me directly if you have any questions or need help with your own mobile home investing business, all for the monthly cost of a cup of coffee. So definitely check it out if you haven't done so already. I've got so much planned for the membership for the upcoming year and into the future. go to www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/support to get more details on how you can support me and get details on becoming a member. And for those of you listening who are already members, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate you. So there you have it, the details and latest scoop about my private podcast and what it's all about. I hope you'll join me on there to hear about the adventures and stories that I continue to have as a successful mobile home investor. There, I'm more candid. You'll get to know more about me and the way I do things when it comes to running a successful mobile home investing business. Plus, I think it's a lot of fun both for me as a podcaster and you as a listener. So if you're interested and you'd like to check out my private podcast, I'll have the link to the first episode right here in the show notes. Go to www.adventuresofmobilehomes.com/81 to get all the details about the private podcast, including how you can start listening to it today. Well, that's about it for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode about the details and latest scoop about my private podcast and what it's all about. I really hope you'll join me there, as I've got a lot planned for it already, so stay tuned. And if you've enjoyed the podcast so far, please be sure to share it with family and friends. And be sure to follow me and subscribe. And if you have some time, please write a review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser if you've enjoyed the podcast. It really helps me to keep motivated and come up with more content to help you become a better mobile home investor. That's about it for now. Until next time, this is Rachel Hernandez, aka Mobile Home Girl of the Adventures of Mobile Homes podcast, signing off. Thanks for tuning in.